Nearly everyone in the world is part of some community, whether large or small, and all of these communities have similar needs. They need light, they need heat, they need air conditioning, they need food to be grown or provided, distributed and stored safely. They need waste products to be collected, removed, and processed. And a supply of energy is the basis for all of these activities.
Well, nuclear energy is a controversial topic, and we've all seen the devastating effects of Fukushima and Chernobyl. Yet some scientists are now claiming there's a new nuclear alternative, thorium. It's said to be much safer and cleaner than uranium. But is it?
Almost all of the nuclear power we use on Earth today uses water as a basic coolant. Now this has some advantages, but it has a lot of disadvantages. You see, I had the good fortune to learn about a different form of nuclear power that doesn't have all these problems for a very simple reason. It's not based on water cooling, and it doesn't use solid fuel. Surprisingly, it's based on salt, specifically the fluorides of lithium, beryllium, uranium, and thorium. Fluoride salts are remarkably chemically stable. They do not react with air and water. Here's the real magic. They don't have to operate at high pressure.
Thorium reactors run in a molten situation. The fuel is dissolved in a molten salt, so they can't have a meltdown. They're already molten. If there is an accident and you need to turn the thing off immediately, what will happen is that the fuel will drain off to a passive containment, which has no moving parts and is able to dissipate the heat through convection, through a chimney.
In water-cooled reactors, you generally have to provide power to the plant to keep the water circulating and to prevent a meltdown, as we saw in Japan. But in this reactor, if you lose the power to the reactor, it shuts itself down all by itself without human intervention and puts itself in a safe and controlled configuration.
Yeah, look, it's safer and cleaner because it doesn't exist, and it's cheaper because it doesn't exist. So they're really just hallucinating. They make it up and they say it'll be cheap, it'll be safe, it'll be this, it'll be that. Where is it? It doesn't exist. The industry's been trying to get a thorium fuel cycle proven up since at least the 1960s. It's never worked. It's always been found to be too expensive and complex, and every few years the industry, realising how unpopular uranium burning reactors are, is keen to promote the fact that they've discovered something that'll work better, but to be honest, I'll believe it when I see it.
A consortium of Australian and Czech Republic interests has unveiled plans to proceed with the development of a thorium-fuelled molten salt reactor from next year. Spokesperson for the Australian-Czech consortium, Phil Joyce, said preparatory work on the functioning prototype will be finalised in the first quarter of 2012, with development estimated to cost around 300 million Australian dollars.
To be honest, it's simply never worked. A lot of money's been tipped into it, and I think you've got to look at the performance of the industry, not its promises, and that's the same whether it's thorium, fuel cycle or uranium.
We will be going nuclear at some stage, so the sooner we get nuclear right, the better we'll be. Some people who are working on thorium reactors calculate that the operating cost will be 3 cents a kilowatt hour, which is about 25% cheaper than coal-fired power stations are at the moment. And as the price of fossil fuels goes up over the next couple of decades, the gap between thorium being the cheapest and fossil fuels will continue to widen, and it will simply be the cheapest option.
They've got a point to the degree that if you could get one built, the waste products, the radioactive waste products, are probably an order of magnitude less than the waste that results from uranium burning reactors. It's shorter half-life material and there's less of it.
If you run a thorium reactor at 1 gigawatt for a year, you end up with 1 tonne of fission products and about 30 grams, up to 30 grams of the transuranic waste. So you have 1/10,000th of the high-level waste using the thorium route as opposed to the current uranium route through light water reactors.
You can also then turn around and go back and take some of the waste that's already been created in our uranium-fueled reactors and potentially destroy those long-lived transuranics through fission. Waiting them out to decay is a very slow process. Plutonium-239, for instance, has a 24,000-year half-life, so that's a long time you're going to be waiting for that to decay. On the other hand, you can fission it, and then those fission products will decay very rapidly, and you also get an energy release and a neutron release, both of which are good.
I think it's a huge and expensive distraction away from technologies that are much closer to being commercialised in particular large-scale solar energy and wave energy that are much closer to being commercialised than anything burning thorium?
Well, it's a question of just how poor we want to be as a nation. Solar and wind will have a place in certain areas on the margins of the grid and so on and beyond the grid. But once you're up to about 200 megawatts, nuclear power will be the cheapest source of energy. And if we're thinking thousands of years, we're better off going down that route and just being a wealthier country. It's a question of what you want to spend your money on having an enormous infrastructure to supply a few volts or being able to spend it on hospitals. It's a choice like that.
Thorium has 1,000,000 times the energy density of a carbon-hydrogen bond. 5,000 tons of thorium would supply the planet with all of its energy for a year. What could that mean for human civilization going out thousands, tens of thousands of years into the future? Because we're not going to run out of this stuff. We will never run out. It is simply too common.
The Premier has previously stated that he considers nuclear power to be a proven and safe source of energy, and that Australia is likely to include nuclear power as part of its energy mix in the future, and should therefore begin planning for it now. But the question remains to be asked: should the government invest its $10 billion potentially in thorium as an energy source, or should we learn from past countries' mistakes and say, nuclear, no thanks? I'm Morgan Pedersen reporting for Undercurrent.